All right. A warm welcome from our side. Welcome to today's webinar around the topic of Introduction into Pricing Analytics. Today's session will be, as stated, entirely around pricing analytics and an introduction from our side. Today is the 2nd of July. We've all had some interesting weeks behind us, and we hope that you are all safe and that looking into a hopefully successful rebound in the next weeks and month ahead. This is the opening. So I'm very glad and honored that today I'm not presenting on myself. I'm very glad that Jurij is joining today's session. Jurij is running our data science department, so he has seen the good and the bad in data. And he obviously is a good person to speak to when we speak about pricing analytics. So today's session will be me and Jurij speaking about pricing analytics. You have a commercial guy and you have a data guy. So this is a good combination. So whenever you have questions also to us, feel free to put them into the chat. The chat function is below the presentation. All right. So why you should listen in the next minutes? I think what we brought for you today, first of all, we will speak about data. Obviously, it's a topic that we have to cover. It's a topic that's for some is not sexy. We will keep it as short as possible, but it needs to be talked about. This is why also Jurij is in the car. Secondly, we will share our view on pricing analytics. We will provide a short introduction on how we view pricing analytics and what it can do for your business and for your business problems. And the third one, we will also share our top 3 analytics with you. So we've done so many projects around the globe, especially in ticketing. And we thought that it might be a good opportunity today to share with Think Pricing community the top 3 analytics pieces that we do. So that's ahead of us. And we would say, let's go and have a great session. Again, the encouragement, take the opportunity to ask us questions. It's here. It lives off your questions, I would say. So please share your thoughts with us. Pricing has become extremely data-driven. I think since most of you are pricing experts to a certain degree, either in the early stage of your career or already experienced, we've all discovered in the last years that pricing has been extremely developed, especially with the new development of data sets. And I mean, if you look in the future and if you predict forward, I mean, it's not rocket science to make a strong statement that pricing will be more data-driven. It will include new data streams. There will be new data sources for you available to incorporate into into pricing decisions. So since this is a very important topic, data, we would say, let's start today's session. First of all, obviously, Jurij, thank you for joining the call. For us, it's an honor that you have the time to join this. So maybe we start with the first broad question. What is pricing analytics for you? I mean, I have a commercial view on it, but what's the view of a data scientist on pricing analytics?
Yeah, first of all, hi, Franz. Hi, people. For me, as a data scientist, pricing analytics is usually, it's an answer to a question. Either you get a question beforehand, a question the customer has, a question you have, right? Or you develop a question while sifting through the data. As a business person, analytics is usually meant to provide some insight into your business. That is usually the answer to your question, the insight. And with that insight, you can improve your decision-making.
So decision-making is one of the key points there. And why analytics can actually help solving your business problem. So what's the power? What's the power behind? Why do you think it's so important for especially commercial people like me to take analytics into consideration?
I mean, looking at your data in general is never a bad idea, right? Because numbers simply don't lie. What you see is what is, right? That's why looking at your data in general is a good idea. Analytics is a little bit more than looking at your data, obviously. Analytics is usually about condensing information out of that data. So there's a lot of information in your data, in your daily work life, around you. And what you actually need to do is figure out what of that information you need to answer certain questions. And usually analytics is your way of doing that. So analytics is your way of filtering out all the noise of the things that you don't need and figuring out what answers actually your problem or your questions. That's why you should use analytics. It provides you the means to answer the questions you have, and it does so fast and reliably. So you can make these decisions accurately, right, and quicker than without analytics.
Yeah. So speed and quality of decision making is one of the points there. Why analytics is so important. I've touched in the introduction on the topic of data. I mean, we all work with data to a certain degree. Nothing new. We don't want to repeat all the things that have been said around data. So let's change the view here a bit. So if you look at data, and you've worked in so many projects on our side, what is data that you look for? What type of data are you looking for? Do you have a specific view on data? So what is your view on data in a sense?
I would say probably 95% of the cases we're dealing with transaction level data. That means every ticket purchase or every entry is one data point for us. That is usually as fine-grained as it gets, and that allows you to perform aggregations later on, so you don't lose information in the process. Usually we enrich that data with certain attributes that we use for groupings, right? You have those here on the slide. So attributes are variables we're adding to these data points is, of course, the core product you're selling. So if you're a hotel, you're selling hotel rooms. If you're an airline, you're selling probably flights. That's one aspect. For me, usually the most important aspect is pricing dimensions, so-called pricing dimensions, which are usually point of sales, price categories, ticket types. So what you want to know is which ticket has been sold online, which ticket has been sold offline, which ticket has been sold to adolescents, which has been sold to adults. And then you can perform aggregations on that later on to figure out different behavior and so on. Yeah, and last but not least, your concrete offering. So in case of a hotel, that would be the suite that is booked, or for a theater, it's a specific show that is played with a date attached to it that you can differentiate more fine-grained. That's how I see data and work with data at Smart Pricing and Think Pricing.
Okay, so transaction is basically the starting point, and then enriching it with product, pricing dimensions, and offering data. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So I would let's assume I'm a new person when it comes to pricing. So I want to start. Where would I go to find such information on transaction level data, for example? Okay. Where would be such information being stored in companies or in corporates?
Yeah, that's a good question, because it's a reoccurring one. Again and again, as you know, and as I know, in our every work life. I think a lot of people actually shy back from using that data because A, they think it's difficult to acquire, or B, because they think what they have is not sufficient. I would like to tell you here now, for basic analytics, you definitely do have what it takes somewhere, because without that information you need for basic analytics, you couldn't file your taxes properly. That I'm quite certain. You need to know what you sold, when, where, and probably even to whom. That's information that is somewhere. Usually that is with an external service provider, ticketing systems like Eventim, SAP, Skidada, Ticketmaster, you name them. If you're really lucky, then you have an in-house solution that stores your data. That's usually very nice, because you can actually ask inside your own company to get that data. If not, then you have to ask your ticket service provider that you're working with.
All right. So the data piece is actually done. Thank you for sharing your thoughts and how you look at data.
You're very welcome.
Then let's move to the next stage. What would I need if I wanted to start working with data? So what do I need if I want to start my first analytics? What are the components that I need to have in place?
Yeah, I mean, component-wise, there's of course a lot of different things, but the main topic here is the data itself, of course, and data differentiates in quality and quantity. So what we use in statistics is a term called a representative sample set. So if you want to analyze your data, if you want to have a snapshot of your company as it is right now, for example, you need to have a sample set of your data that captures all the regularities and all the irregularities. Let me give you a simple example. We're going to take a sports example because we're Germans and soccer, let's say you're a German soccer club and you have your ticket sales for your home matches and you want to analyze them and you have half a season finished. Whatever you do with that data, no matter which KPI you're looking at or which plot you're looking at, the result will be vastly different if the first half of the season includes or excludes the match with FC Bayern Munich, because that is when you always have a full house. So including this match would probably be a good idea. So probably take a whole season, right? Not just half a season if you want to have a realistic snapshot. That's what it takes. That's the amount of data you need. If you talk time series observations, meaning variables that are observed over time, like over seasons, then you probably need like 2 or 3 years of data and so on and so on. So that is the first thing that needs to be in place. Regarding on the question and the analytics you want to conduct, you need the right amount of data. And of course, you need the right quality of data. I think we're going to talk about that later a bit, but in general, you need to know what you're working with. That's kind of what it boils down to. Make sense?
It does make sense. And when it comes to the question of how to process this data, so we will speak about software a bit. Since we spoke about the data piece, anything that you would like to share with around when it comes to tools, software, anything that I need to have before I get started?
Yeah, I mean, if you're starting out, Excel is totally fine. It's used widely, and that is of course for a reason. There are other BI tools that you can use, usually also fine, especially the larger ones. You run into trouble if your data sets get very large. All of these tools, especially Excel, I think everyone has experienced laggy Excel pages in their life when working with Excel. And if you try to fit like 2 or 3 seasons, like gigabytes of data into Excel, that just simply doesn't work. I mean, we usually program all our solutions to get around that and get more control over what we're actually working with and how we are depicting that. But if you're starting out, I would say Excel is totally fine, especially if you're working on small data sets or subsets. As a first step, that works.
All right, thank you. Since we're talking today on the 2nd of July about the introduction into pricing analytics together with Jurij from data science, let's get into the business. So let's assume you get the data. Let's assume you have a decently large data set. Let's say it has 1 million transaction spread across 30 columns. So we're speaking a lot of data entries in a sense, which, for example, in Excel will be already hard to manage. Can you walk us through, once you get such a decent set of data, how do you start as a data scientist? So you get a data set. What are the steps that you take?
That's actually a very boring answer, because the first things you do are sanity checks. Usually, yeah, there we go. Usually what you have to do is check that what you received actually matches what the sender intended to give you. That's like the first thing you need to check. Is this really what I'm supposed to work with? Are there missing values? Are there missing columns? Does the content of a column actually match the header? Very important. Are there formatting issues? I mean, a reoccurring topic is numbers getting formatted to dates in Excel automatically. So yeah, you know that, you've experienced that. So have I. That happens. You have to check for that. You can just start working right away. That's like, think of it as a foundation. You're building a pyramid, and the data is your foundation of everything. If that's crooked, then the result on top is not going to be proper. Okay, so that's like the first and actually the most important thing you can probably do is check the quality of your data to make sure you're working with what you expect you're working with.
Yeah. I think this can be, I can highlight this, that this is an important piece because I mean, if you build the model of the pyramid, because if you end up putting the last stone on top of the pyramid and you realize something is not working in the basement right, you have to build the entire new pyramid. So we've all experienced this, I guess. So this is why sanity checks are so important. And this is why, for example, we spend a lot of resources also on think pricing side on improving the sanity checks there.
Yeah.
So this was after the data. The sanity check is the next step that you take, and let's assume you also passed this one. And this is you've crossed it, the sanity check chasm. Let's speak about analytics then. So analytics is a broad topic, obviously, and today we are speaking about obviously pricing analytics. What would you recommend? I mean, everybody's looking forward to the answer. What would you recommend are the most 3 powerful pricing analytics that we've come across in the last 5 years working with pricing data and ticketing data? What are the 3 ones to take home?
Yeah, that's a loaded question. You know that probably, which is why you're asking. So that depends a little bit where you're coming from. So if you're coming to me with a very concrete question saying, hey, this is not going right and I need to fix this, can you look into that? Can you look into the data? Then what you need is a very, very specific set of analytics and plots and overviews. And there are things that are going to help you very well and they aren't going to help anyone else. So if you're coming from that direction, there's no one size fits all rule for analytics, nothing like the golden analytics. But there are, of course, things that are usually worth looking at, especially if you're trying to get a general understanding of your analytics. So when we talk about analytics, we usually differentiate into categories. We usually differentiate into the what and into the how. So we're either looking at what is being bought and what is being sold, right? Like your products. So we're looking at the how is it being sold? How are people buying? Like when are the dates they're purchasing, booking curves, and the sales channels, and so on. So that's usually what we differentiate into. I'm quite certain you have a few examples of things that have proven themselves in the past, Franz. Have you not?
Yes, I prepared something. I think it's important what Jurij just mentioned, because we usually get questions from working with clients and also building the think pricing platform here. They usually ask us, what are the key analytics I need to check out? And our answer is usually not satisfying. It's the typical lawyer answer, which is it depends on the circumstances, as Jurij said. Though we still believe there are always some takeaways on this. So this is why, despite this depends, we've put our heads together and brought for you 3 analytics that we'd like to share today with you. The main goal of the next 3 analytics pieces is not to dive into the last so what's out of this analytics, but to give you an introduction into what actually can be done if analytics is deployed correctly in pricing. So let's get going. First one that we check out, potentially some of you are aware of this. First of all, short comment on the structure. On the left side, you see an example of what the analytics can actually look like. On the top, you obviously have the title, which is what is the analytics actually is about. Below the graphics, you have 3 indicators. On the left side, you have a level. Levels are ranging from 1 to 3, meaning 1 is easy, 3 is more complex. We're speaking here about the level 2 analytics. You then have the second parameter. There is currently stating product. Please recall what Jurij mentioned earlier about the what, so the product, and the how transaction data or analytics in general can be structured. In this case, we're looking at a product analytics. And the third parameter you see down there is around the type of analytics. So we do have certain analytics. In this case, we're looking at the metrics. So level 2 analytics around product and the metrics. First one up is the so-called product portfolio analytics. It has, unfortunately, there's no laser pointer on the y-axis. It has the ATP, so it's the so-called average transaction price, and on the x-axis, now it's in German, it's a lot of x's. So on the x-axis, you actually have the transactions. So basically, how many people are buying a product? So again, x-axis, transaction, and ATP, the average price a consumer or a customer pays for your product. The bubble itself and the size of the bubble represents the revenue. So this product portfolio analysis provides you a good starting point in order to understand where you should put your focus. It does not necessarily mean you get the super duper so what's out of this analytics, but it gives a clear indication on where you should dig deeper. It gives an indication you should focus on the bigger bubbles, or you should focus on the products that have high amount of transactions or a lot of frequency of buying. So it usually it's a good starting point when looking into your pricing analytics. Fun fact at this point of time, this analytics usually confirms the so-called Pareto principle, so the 80-20 rule, meaning with 20% of your products, you in most cases make 80% of your revenue. It's an old principle, but it usually applies in a lot of projects. So we think when we would rank it, this is one of the very powerful analytics to start with. We call this product portfolio analytics. Second one that we brought with you, please remember we start on the bottom left. It's a level 3 analysis, so it's what we call already quite advanced. It's now around the booking. So how your customers and your clients actually buy your product. And it's actually also a metrics. So the ATP in volume, it's a very powerful analytics you already see a lot of data points. It includes basically all your products that you're selling. Example could be if you're a hotel and you have a certain product type on a certain day, for example, 50 rooms are getting sold on a certain day, this would be represented with a dot on, for example, today. Tomorrow would be another dot for the product. So this is very powerful if you want to see areas of over and underpriced areas. So again, if you run such an analytics, you would understand quickly where you should put your focus. And also you can see whether your designed pricing structure actually meets the market. So actually if your pricing or the pricing that you've developed is actually translating into the results here. Just a short reminder, since I forgot this in the early stage, the x-axis is the volume. So from left to right, it's left axis is basically a low transaction volume. Right axis is high transaction volume. And again, the y-axis is the ATP, so the average ticket price. You might wonder why it suddenly stops on the right side. This is due to that this data set here has a capacity constraint, so it does not go further. Third analytics, again, level 2, booking, so how people buy, line chart. This is the average transaction price or average ticket price, whatever industry you were in, over time. Meaning, again, x-axis from days out, for example, 300 days before your event or before for lifetime of your product ends. It generally doesn't matter. On the right side of the axis, basically where it also states end, this is where end of life cycle of product is achieved. And there, if you basically map the average transaction price, so how people actually buy, when do they buy the cheap products, when do they buy the more expensive products, it's a super interesting trend to look into, because in most cases, it will be a surprise because it's not matching what you actually designed your pricing structure for. Super powerful and recommended to do. So, Jurij, since we've touched on data now, we've touched on sanity checks, we've quickly run through it depends analytics, but we still shared 3 of very powerful analytics with the audience. Do you have something to share with us when it comes to risks? Because I mean, we've had the picture of the pyramid. Fun fact: we have a pyramid down here. Can you share some insights into what are the risks when working with and pricing analytics?
Yeah, I mean it's basically already summed up on the slide. So analytics itself is like, it's a descriptive task, right? It's a tool like a hammer. A hammer itself doesn't do anything wrong. You have to do something wrong with it. So, I mean, the biggest risk is that you draw the wrong conclusions out of what you're seeing. And then that can be, of course, for multiple reasons. I think the most common one is that your data is not on point, that you didn't do your quality checks right. So if you are missing parts of your data, you might come to the wrong conclusions. If there's something in there that shouldn't be in there, you come to the wrong conclusions, like canceled tickets or so. That might be the case. That's probably the most common one. Or also when you're setting a wrong focus. Let's say you have an idea what's going wrong and you want to want to confirm that idea and you really focus on exactly that and nothing else, and then you might leave important things out of the picture. So you might not actually get to a real conclusion, but just to what you thought was right anyway. Right? That's what you can do wrong. And then you can act on that. And when you act on that, you might make a mistake because the conclusion is not correct. But the analytics itself can't do anything to hurt you.
Yeah, I'd like to hammer comparison there. Thanks for the support when this whole session, especially now with the risk at the end. If we want to sum up what we've just covered today, because we are approaching the end of the session, the key takeaways for you to take home. I mean, first of all, transaction data. I think this is a key. Accessing your transaction data, building the entire analytics around transaction data. We've made the experience is the most powerful approach. Thank you, Jurij, for giving us insights into how to build this up. The second one, key takeaways, is the importance of the sanity checks. And again, I will stick with the example of the pyramid because if the basement is not set up correctly, the entire pyramid will not stand long. And the third key takeaway is our understanding and how we cluster analytics, because we think in two ways around analytics. Either you're thinking about the product, so what people buy, so your offerings basically to the customer. And the second dimension is how they buy it, how much time in advance, through what sales channel, through what payment methods. There's so many features and parameters you can build up around the how. This is so powerful and interesting to look to. Following up on this, we've touched on three examples, on three analytics examples. What we will do, we will record a demo for you guys where we will run through such analytics. We will also share with you files that you can download to run those analytics on yourself. And we will get back on the demos because we have the feeling that this is something that people are asking for. How do I build this up? How do I correlate correctly? So we will record a demo in the next days and we'll share it. We will share it with you guys. From our side, basically, we have two things left. One is looking forward. I mean, we are building the company Think Pricing basically around the topic of democratizing the pricing problem. So we want to make sure that we ship our know-how, that we make this accessible for everybody who deals with pricing. And this is why we will keep pushing. First of all, there will be another webinar coming up about the question of where we invite basically pricing experts that can be challenged with your questions. This will happen in July, where they will answer live the questions. There will be a fourth webinar coming up with the topic of price optimization in August. So really, how do I do it? How do I run a price optimization? I'm very much looking forward to this one in August then. And obviously, there's more coming soon. We do have white papers on the website. We will also post in the chat now a link to our homepage again, where you can find the white papers and more resources around pricing. We will also upload this webinar for you. So there's more to come. We will keep pushing. Our mission is to democratize everything that's happening in pricing and share our know-how with you guys. Before we come to an end, Q&A. So guys, feel free. We've had a quick download of Jurij's brain when it comes to data analytics and introduction to data analytics with all those single steps. You've also had me speaking about the commercial view of how do I read analytics. So let's hear it up. Do you have any questions that you would like to ask now? Please feel free to share. Please feel free to use the link.
It would be interesting to know the tools, methods you're using for demand change simulations in August. First of all, no problem, Robert.
Emilio, we will take this on. So once the webinar is exactly scheduled, we will usually post this in LinkedIn in our groups there. We will also share it through our newsletters. We will also take care that your request will be taken care of. That we will try to incorporate this into the August session when we speak about the simulation piece there, the optimization piece. Yeah, Emilio, thank you. All right. Thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you for spending those 30 quick and hopefully informative minutes with us today on the 2nd of July around the topic of introduction into pricing analytics. Jurij from Data Science, thank you very much for joining, supporting me, sharing your view on pricing analytics. And there's nothing more to say from our side than please stay safe, please stay healthy. And we are all looking forward to hearing you soon and would be glad to welcome you in the next webinar series. Take care. Bye-bye.
It was a pleasure.